Chapter 24. Vice Chairman Tragan usually visited his superior's house only on social occasions, such as one of their special parties. For him to be summoned in the middle of the working day and required to make a report was unprecedented. "Good of you to spare the time from your busy schedule," said Freeth, who was sitting at his massive dining table with a large napkin tied round his neck, well on the way to finishing a heaped plate of Whitstable oysters. No, don't sit down," he went on. "I know you'll be dying to get back to whatever it is you find to fill your time." He chose the largest of the oysters that was left and gulped it down. "You can't imagine the glee with which I learned, I was a mere stripling at the time, that these little beasts are still alive when we swallow them. I used to imagine them crying out for help as they slid down my throat and landing with a plop in the acids of my stomach." He picked up a fork and stabbed it into the body of one of the oysters before him. "Eek," he said in a tiny voice, and giggled. He swallowed another. "You will forgive me if I finish my lunch?" "Of course." Tragan's mouth was a tight slit in the midst of his tumultuous face. "So," the chairman continued, "young Waldo Rudley is e'en now winging his way to his fated destiny. Or is that a tautology? Fated destiny? Well, never mind. Let us hope he meets his pleonastic doom. Unlike your recent candidates. A little hobby of yours, is it, letting people escape?" He dispatched another bivalve on its last journey. Tragan was standing as stiffly as one of his own statues. Only the darkening face betrayed the fact that he was alive. "Captain Rudley is on his way to the Lacan, yes," he said. Freeth took a noisy slurp from a pint of Chateau d'Yquem. "You know, it's amazing what getting one's trotters into the trough and one's snout into a glass or two of slosh will do for the spirits, Tragan. I begin to feel optimistic again. I'm glad to hear it. I'm almost persuaded that your catastrophic inefficiency is merely an amusing, or dare I say, a lovable, little idiosyncrasy." He squinted with unamused, unloving, piggy eyes at his victim. "Almost," he said. "Of course, a repetition could lead to the most painful consequences," he continued. "And you do understand, dear boy, that when I say painful, I mean agonizing. But of course you do." "There'll be no repetition," said Tragan. "Good," said Freeth. He ate another half-dozen oysters. "Will that be all, Chairman?" said Tragan. "No," said Freeth. He ate two more. He took another swig of wine. He ate the last three and sighed. "Still," he said, removing the napkin and delicately dabbing the corners of his thick lips, "what harm can these wretched people do to us now? As long as we hold their ship, they can't return to Earth. And as for the rest, aren't they fugitives? If they show a nose above the parapet, pop! I've always enjoyed shooting a sitting bird." "All the same, Chairman," said Tragan, "I think it would be as well to tread very delicately until we're sure." Freeth nodded vigorously, his jowls wobbling. "Oh, belt and braces. Belt and braces every time." He belched loud and long. He smiled sweetly and spoke in a voice brimming with affection. "That's why you're going to find them for me and destroy them, aren't you, Tragan, my pet?" From the start, Jeremy found it difficult to keep up. Anya led the way. Before leaving the fly car, which they had buried under a pile of branches and leaves, she had changed from her housekeeper garb into the boots and slacks more suitable for fighting a way through a jungle. They'd been going for what seemed like hours. Jeremy could see Anya at the head of the column. She never seemed to need a rest, he thought. She just ploughed ahead, without a thought for the poor blighters at the back. Sometimes she'd pause and have a bit of a look round, or glance at a sort of compass thingy she carried. But before you could so much as catch your breath, she was off again, chomping her way through the tangle with a big, heavy knife. What did they call it? A machete, wasn't it? Like hatchet, only machete? That sort of thing it was? Apart from anything else, she told everyone to look out and keep together, because of all the nasties they'd got in these woods. If those giant plummy things that ate you from the tummy outwards were anything to go by, he didn't need telling. And then went racing on ahead like those fellows at school who'd won the Victor Ludorum and stuff. And Jeremy had always come last in those races too. He was hot and thirsty. And then there was that bird, if it was a bird, which must have followed them all the way, just making a noise like an unoiled hinge. Ick, 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 over and over, one every 3 seconds, regular as hickory-dickory. And then it would stop. And just when you were about to say, "Thank the Lord for that," it started again. Ick, ick, ick. He was just about to call out for them all to slow down a bit when it happened. He'd put on a bit of spurt to catch up so they'd hear him, and just as he was opening his mouth to shout, something grabbed his right foot. For a moment he was frozen, but then he let out a yell that must have been heard in Paracon City. "What's the matter?" called the brigadier. Something's got me by the foot." "Keep very still," said the doctor. "I can't do anything else," squeaked Jeremy. The doctor turned to the others. "Don't move anybody," he said. "Anya, have you any idea what it might be?" Jeremy could only just hear her low reply. "No," she said. "Unless it's a trap lizard. You'd have to cut its head off before a trap lizard would let go. And if it's an arrow serpent, we're all in trouble." "Oh, help! Help!" he called in a sort of loud whisper. "Shh," said the doctor, who was moving towards him so smoothly and surely that scarcely a leaf was disturbed. "It's all right, old fellow," he went on, speaking on his breath. "We'll soon have you out of there. Shh, shush." He was now right by Jeremy. He slowly squatted until, with movements as slow and careful as a stalking cat, he could reach out and part the leaves which hid the creature from view. Jeremy screwed up his eyes. He couldn't bear to look. What if it bit his foot right off? "All right, Jeremy," said the doctor in a normal voice, standing up. "You can take it out." "The thing's still got me." "You've caught your ankle between 2 tree roots." "What?" He looked down. Sure enough, there was his right leg jammed firmly between 2 high roots. "So I have. Sorry." Pulling his leg backwards, he extracted his foot. "Oh, Jeremy," said Sarah. There, no sympathy, no backing up a fellow journalist. Just the elder sister routine all over again. "For Pete's sake, let's get a move on," said the doctor, moving back to Anya. "Lethbridge Stewart, would you be so good as to bring up the rear? Then you can keep an eye on him." And then the brig started ordering him about as well. "Come on, Jeremy," he was saying. "On our way. Chop, chop." Why did everybody have to be so beastly rotten to him? He'd said sorry, hadn't he? "Sorry, everybody," he said again as they moved off. "I mean, I really am sorry, Sorry, Anya. Sorry, Sarah. I mean, sorry and all that." At least it had a bit of a rest. By the time they stopped for their proper rest, when the rays of the great red sun were slanting almost vertically through the high branches, Anya could see that they were all starting to flag, even the doctor and the brigadier. Perhaps she had been pushing too hard, she thought. It was difficult to judge. About as far again to reach the eastern hills, she said, as she distributed a piece of tipka root with the poisonous skin scraped off. Then we start climbing. When we get to the top, you'll be able to see the valley. That's when I feel I've come home to my family. When I lost my teacher, said the doctor, I felt as if my father had died. Again, she considered this man who so often seemed to mirror her own thoughts. She propped her back against a convenient slark tree. She could tell from the condition of the bones in it that the stark nest was old and abandoned, and told them all, about old Darshi. So many pictures in her head, seeing Katyan Glessy as if she were another person, as in a sense she was, knowing again the quiet welcome of the people of Skyland and the Kimonians, living once more the endless days which allowed the grateful sun to heal the hurt in her body, and at the last having no choice but to face the sickness in her mind. Katyan had become a familiar sight to the Kimonians, wandering from her tiny hut near Darshi's through the scattered wooden buildings which formed their village. When she had first emerged from her refuge, it seemed to her that the huts were placed at random, as if a giant hand had dropped them from the sky to settle at the whim of the wind. But as she explored the settlement, she found that each was sitting in exactly the right position, convenient to the stream perhaps, and sitting on the precise point of a gentle slope which would allow a view of the beasts in their communal corral, yet forming with its immediate neighbours a family of houses which, in its welcoming arms, offered a focus of love and security to all. For the Kimonians were a beautiful people, like prepubescent children both in stature and in the innocence of their smooth, large-eyed faces. They seemed incapable of building or making anything that was not beautiful to see. The roughly hewn beams which formed the houses, the lie of the fences with the contours of the fields and the sweep of the corn, the very fall of a half-eaten haystack, all answered the curves of the wide green valley and the harsher lines of the rocky hills which enclosed it. Nothing was square or straight. To Katyan, it felt as if every line, every plane had grown in its rightful place, as inevitably as the muscles and sinews grow in the body of a living creature. But the more this became plain, and the more the families, and it was difficult to know where one family started and the next one stopped, took her into their homes, welcoming her as if she were a beloved daughter returned from afar, the more alien she felt, and the more she withdrew into the solitude of her little house, as if her very presence would defile Kimonia. It never seemed that the young old man who was called the father of the tribe set out to be her teacher. He would appear apparently at random, but always when she was in need, and disappear long before she felt his presence irksome. A word or two of comfort, or of loving mockery, an overtly simple story which turned out to be enormously complex, and then even simpler than had first appeared, a light suggestion of a game she might like to play. Such things became the nourishment she needed on the spiritual journey she had unwittingly undertaken. So, travelling alone, but always knowing there was a hand waiting to catch her should she fall, she braved the darkness, fought the Katyan demons, and annihilated them, only to find herself teetering on the edge of an abyss of emptiness. Darshi's hand reached out to her, and pushed her into the void. But who was falling? Not Katyan Glessy. She had perished with the demons, and how could she be falling if there was nowhere left to go? And suddenly the darkness was shining with the radiance of the sun, and there was nowhere left to go. And there was nowhere left to go, said Onya. She looked at her four listeners. On only one of the faces did she see any understanding of what she was saying. How could she explain what she meant? He showed me how to untie the knots in my mind, she said. How to let the clouds melt away so that I could see the sky again. Words. And so he called me Onya Farjan, skyborn or born of the sky. There was silence, and then Sarah breathed, Look at that butterfly. The insect, a hand's breadth across, was fluttering above Onya's head. The doctor put out a gentle hand and plucked it from the air, placing it on his left hand where it lay, silver-blue wings outspread. He stroked its back with the middle finger of his right hand, and then he tossed it into the air, where it flew in a wide zigzag up into the canopy of trees and out into the sun. Anya laughed. "Come on," she said. "We must be going." Jeremy groaned. "Must we?" he said.